Good morning to everybody, and greetings in the name of Jesus. This morning, I would like to share with you for our prayer from the book of Psalms. And in particular, it'll be Psalm 139. This is a psalm that is written as an encouragement by King David, who understood that God cares for him. God cared for David when he was young and when he was old, when he was poor and when he was rich, and when he was a shepherd and a king. This psalm falls neatly into 4 sections of 6 verses each, and in it, David answers 4 questions. And the 4 questions are: 1, how well does God know me? 2, how close is God to me? 3, how carefully has God made me? And 4, how much does God protect and help me? All 24 verses very closely link us, God's creation, with God, the Creator. We are super important in the eyes of our Maker. And all the way through these verses, we read words such as the Lord, the Spirit, and God, and I, me, and myself. To King David, God is there. But better than that, he is also here. He is reachable, he is knowable, available, and real. But even more, not only is he here, he is involved and he is interested with every single individual on this planet. And so the first question that David answers is, how well does God know me? If you've ever been part of a large organization such as a university or a large company or government agency, it's unlikely that you have ever met the people at the top of the leadership chain. You may have read their announcements or have heard of their names, but it is unlikely that you know them personally, and vice versa. It is unlikely that they know you personally, that they would know you from any other person within their organization. And so it's only natural to wonder if the supreme ruler of the world, who has so many things to do, if that supreme ruler of the universe knows me. And so the first question is, how well does God know me? The first 6 verses of this psalm tell us that God is omniscient and he knows everything. David says, "O Lord, you have searched me and you have known me. You know when I sit down and when I rise up. You understand my thought from afar. You scrutinize my path and my lying down, and are intimately acquainted with all my ways. Even before there is a word on my tongue, behold, O Lord, you know it all." David uses the word search me, O Lord. And in the Hebrew, that term kind of has the idea of exploring, digging into or digging through something. The idea is that God explores and he really digs into every part of my life. God knows what I'm thinking when I'm eating or when I'm going to get the mail, when I'm doing homework or whatever it is that I'm doing. But even more than just knowing what I'm doing, God knows my thoughts. And therefore, he understands the hidden, unspoken motives behind my actions. He knows our words before they roll off of our tongues, which causes David to write, God, you know it all. So to answer the first question, how well does God know me? These first 6 verses tell us that God couldn't possibly know us any better. And for the person who is struggling with feeling unimportant, think about the fact that you are the object of the living God's attention every moment of every day. And so the second question that David answers is, how close is God to me? Someone might think, okay, so God knows me, but how close is he to me? Is he near? David says, yes. David says, or asks rhetorically, where can I go from your spirit? Or where can I flee from your presence? If I ascend to heaven, you are there. If I make my bed in Sheol, behold, you are there. If I take the wings of dawn, if I dwell in the remotest part of the sea, behold, you are there. In the Hebrew Bible, when David says you, it sounds like you. If I go up to heaven, you. If I go down to the grave, you. It's kind of like running into somebody multiple times in a day and you say, there you are again. Are you following me? And David says the same thing. There you are. David even says that not even the darkness can affect God's presence. David says even darkness is not dark to you. And so God knows us. He is close to us. He understands all the complexities, all the quirks, and he knows us. He knows our unique difficulties. He knows us better than our parents. He knows us better than our best friends. And best of all, he cares. The third question that David answers is, how carefully has God made me? Most of us have studied, to some degree, different aspects of our universe. We studied about the thousands of different plants. We studied about the process of photosynthesis. We learned about the atmosphere, about condensation, evaporation. We learned about the many wonderful things and processes that go on in our world. But King David thinks, and I agree with him, I am a little biased, that the human body is one of the most beautiful and jaw-dropping creations. In very general and simple terms, David says that, and he describes the life of an embryo, the tiny human being formed inside the mother. And David says, and the point that he makes is that only a God who knows us so well and is so near to us would be involved in making us. David says, for you formed my inward parts, you wove me in my mother's womb. And again, the you here is very emphatic. The idea is that you, God, you yourself, and no one else have created me. And the word form means to originate. So God originates our inward parts. In other words, he isn't handed the materials and then puts us together, but he himself is the one who creates and forms us. He creates the materials himself. And David goes further to say that God not only creates our kidneys, our hearts, our lungs, our vital organs, but that he also wove them together. He put our organs in such places and wove them together with pipes and tubes so that everything would work well together. He has made us very carefully. David continues to say, I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very well. And the last question that David answers is, how much does God protect and help me? After having expressed his joy about God's care and his plan for him, David starts to think about his future. If God put so much thought and effort into making me, there must be a plan. And so David says that, yes, there is a plan, and there are going to be times where I am going to be in trouble. And maybe God will allow me or even put me in tough situations, but he has a plan for me. He will protect me. And that is something that David relied on. And having that in mind, David refers to the enemies of God with very harsh words. Something that was very difficult for me to understand when David says, "Oh God, slay those people." Is David really asking for God to do an injustice? Well, if we think about it in this way, that when David was looking at these people who were not just people who didn't believe in God, they weren't just people who disagreed with God or just didn't want to believe in God, they were people who raised their fists against God. They hated God and they hated God's people. And so David calls them people who are wicked, men of bloodshed, and men who speak evil against God. These are people who do not respect God's name, and they use it in vain. And David says, "God, if you would pronounce your judgment that you would be pronouncing, Lord, I know that I too, one of your people, will be safe." And before David finishes this song, he asks God for one more thing. David again says, "Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxious thoughts, and see if there is any wicked way in me, and lead me in the everlasting way." David wanted to be God's man no matter what, and so he invites God to examine his heart. He says, "Search me." And it is the same search, it is the same idea of the first word, search, to explore, to dig into. David asks God, "Please explore, examine, dig into my heart. You already know what's there, but I want you to do it so you can show me if there's any way in my heart, in my thoughts, that is not pleasing to you. And would you please show me? And after you show me, would you please lead me in the right way?" And so now, as we set ourselves to pray, let us remember that God knows us very well. He is always near us, and he has put a lot of thought and effort into making us. He protects and he helps us. So let us stand and pray, and let us invite God to search our hearts as David did, and that he would lead us in the right way. If anybody would like to pray, you can, and then I will conclude.